Well, Mr Speaker, I speak, I think, on behalf of everyone in the coalition government when I say I would rather face 100 duck-sized horses than sit through another speech as woeful as that from the Leader of the Opposition. I have to say, I haven't seen Labor MPs struggle that much to get through something since Aisha Verrall took up singing. And Mr Speaker, I think Chris Hipkins went to bed last night, he put on the Spider-Man pyjamas, he woke up this morning thinking he'd be a great left-wing hero, and all we got was the same old negativity, the constant, the relentless, the joyless talking down of New Zealand that we've come to expect from the Labor Party. And I'll ask you, what didn't we get? What we didn't get was policy. We didn't get a single credible policy, not one. And I have to say, I think it's very clear and obvious now that, officially speaking, the 2026 Labor Party are the laziest opposition in the history of New Zealand, because all they're doing is doing some TikToks and some singing about ducks, for God's sake. Mr Speaker, I think for the sake of the grim-faced members opposite, I truly do hope that Kieran McAnulty does a much better job of that speech next year, because the bar, frankly, couldn't be lower. Now, Mr Speaker, I've always said you can judge a party by the contradictions. And on that measure, Labor is world-class, aren't they? On the one hand, they ban oil and gas, and then they complain when manufacturers can't afford the energy. They then oppose mining, but actually they complain when Kiwis move to Australia to take up mining jobs. They want renewable energy, and then they vote against every single measure to actually deliver it. They like to claim, they claim that we back the rich because we gave working Kiwis tax relief, when they make cleaners and retail workers pay off university fees for millionaires' kids. And then they bang on about the cost of living while plotting a capital gains tax that you know is going to hit every farmer, every small business owner, every Kiwi who's ever worked hard and invested in their future. Because, Mr Speaker, at the end of the day, I'm telling you, the Labor Party only has one idea. And they've had it for years, and they're sticking with it. And it is quite simply spend more, tax more, borrow more. That's it. That's the whole kit and caboodle. That's the whole plan. That's the whole document, the complete policy platform of His Majesty's loyal opposition. That is it. And I've got to say, Mr Speaker, they have a spending addiction that is so fierce it's going to make a Vegas poker machine blush. It's really that bad. They want to spend money that they don't have on things that we can't afford, funded by recklessly borrowing against our children's future. That's what they're doing. That's exactly what they're doing. And when the bill comes, they're going to come after your money. They're going to come after your income, your savings, your business, your home. That's what it's going to be about. And if you ask them, how are they going to pay for just one of these sort of harebrained policies I've had called the Future Fund? Did you hear it the other day? Barbara Edmonds said, she can't give us any detail on the Future Fund because of the treaty. But I think even worse was actually Chris Hipkins said they can't give you any details because Kiwis just don't care. That's a pretty pessimistic view of the world. Well, Mr Speaker, I've heard about Rogernomics, but I think what the Labor Party is now running on is Don't Careonomics. That's what it's about. It's called Don't Careonomics. They want to spend more, borrow more, tax more, and if anyone asks any questions, you just shrug and say Kiwis don't care. Well, I'm telling you, we've got to challenge them further, and they've got to say, if you challenge me further, I'll just say it's a treaty breach. That's what it's all about. And that's not acceptable, Mr Speaker, because first they're going to tax your house, then they're going to tax your business, then they're going to tax your KiwiSaver, and then everything else. And their message is really simple. Their message to Kiwis is really simple. It says, if you're successful, you need to be punished. That's essentially the message that they are giving us here today. So I'm telling you, there is not an ambition or an aspiration in this country that Chris Hipkins doesn't want to actually stifle, and not a success that he wants to trample all over. Mr Speaker, this is without doubt no longer the party of Helen Clark and Michael Cullen. This is the party of Don't Careonomics. But, Mr Speaker, enough of Labor, because another year, another outstanding budget from the great Nicola Willis. And aren't we lucky in difficult times, really challenging times, that we have such a diligent, thoughtful, smart, courageous Minister of Finance determined to make New Zealand a better place? In a year of global volatility, in a year of fuel crises and economic headwinds that no one could have predicted, she has once again delivered a budget that is responsible, it's ambitious, and it's laser focused on the future of this country. In the third year, she's knocked it out of the park, and I want to say to Nicola Willis, on behalf of every New Zealander who's now experiencing lower inflation, lower interest rates, we owe you a big debt. Thank you very much. Well, Mr Speaker, on this side of the House, we've been busy. We've been busy working on behalf of every Kiwi to secure New Zealand's future. Not spending more, not borrowing more, not taxing more, delivering more. That's what it's about. And if the Leader of the Opposition speech couldn't wake the members opposite up, they should just stop quacking and pay attention for a little bit, because here's the key things they need to know. Average economic growth at 2.7% per year. That is faster growth this year and next year and the year after that than Australia, the UK, Canada, EU and Japan. Just let that sink in a little bit. Pay attention, 220,000 new jobs being created. How good is that? Wages growing faster than inflation, and that's how Kiwis actually get ahead, so they can actually do more with their hard-earned cash. And we know on this side, widening the gap between wages and prices is the key to making life more affordable for Kiwis, not random cost of living payments to dead backpackers and French people, basically. I know the members love to talk up other countries and talk down New Zealand, and you heard it again today. But here are the facts, and they're not going to like hearing this, and sometimes the media doesn't like hearing this either. But March saw the second lowest number of Kiwis leave in any month since January 23. And if you just take the past year that we've just gone through, 9% more Kiwis have come home and 6% fewer Kiwis have left New Zealand. And that is funny how that doesn't make any of their press releases or media stories. Well, Mr Speaker, this government's mission from day one has been simply fixing the basics and building the future. Fixing the basics that Labor broke, the economy, the cost of living, law and order, and all the public services that Kiwis rely on. And building the future, investing in infrastructure and education and defence and energy security and the trade relationships that are going to determine New Zealand's prosperity for decades to come. Now, we know the past few years have been incredibly difficult for Kiwis. Shock after shock after shock. We've had COVID, we've had Labor's high inflation and recession, extreme weather events, Trump's tariffs, and now we've got a fuel crisis with its origins in the Middle East. And that's why this budget also includes temporary, targeted and timely support for households facing pressure from the fuel crisis. The $50 a week increase in the in-work tax credit and an increase in mileage rates for support workers and for those travelling for specialist treatment. It's a volatile and uncertain world, Mr Speaker, and it demands a government that understands national security in all of its dimensions: economic security, financial security, energy security, international security. Because the bottom line is you don't get prosperity without security, you don't have security without prosperity, because the two are interdependent and linked. And that has been the logic behind Budget 2026. And it's a logic you simply don't hear from the members opposite, because they have no strategy, they have no plan, they have no ideas, just songs about ducks, an endless wish list that has a bottomless wish list, and absolutely no way to pay for it or any except coming after your money. So, Mr Speaker, I just want to talk about the numbers, because without fiscal discipline, we can't have anything else. It's as simple as that. Every dollar we spend servicing debt is a dollar that we don't get to spend on schools and hospitals. It's that simple. A simple fact as true for a government as it is for Kiwi households up and down this country, and one that has apparently never, ever even crossed the mind of the members opposite us in this House today. Because their approach is pretty simple. If you run out of money, just borrow more. If your borrowing gets embarrassing, just tax some more. And if anyone dares to point out that spending more, taxing more, borrowing more is not actually an economic strategy, well, just remember Kiwis don't care, right? That's what it's about. Well, Mr Speaker, we care, and New Zealand's future depends on us caring. Across 3 budgets, this government has found $50 billion in savings, and we have returned that investment to where it belongs, out there on the front line in schools, hospitals, police, cancer drugs, hip and knee replacements. And I'm very pleased to confirm we are forecasting to borrow $6 billion less this year than this year's budget than we were in December, and that we remain on track for that surplus in 2028-2029, a year earlier than previously forecast. because for the third year in a row we have achieved significant savings across government, and that's what it looks like when you're actually fixing the basics. Now, Mr Speaker, let me give you just one example, and that was that it was costing Labor $1.2 million to build a classroom in New Zealand. We standardised the design, we halved the cost, and now we can build twice as many classrooms with the same amount of money that Labor actually had. Now that's not austerity, that's called competence. That's called delivery and knowing how to get things done. And that's what this government does. That's exactly what we are all about. And let's not forget, Mr Speaker, the tax relief that we delivered in 2024, delivering on average about $5,500 to an average household that would be worse off today without that package of help and support. And yet, disgracefully, for parties that purport to be about working New Zealanders, every single one of those members didn't support that single initiative, every single one of them, because their instinct is we want to spend more, tax more, borrow more, and it's your money that we're going to go spend. Well, Mr Speaker, while we stay disciplined on operating spending, the recent fuel crisis has reminded us that we need significant capital investment to build the future too. Modern, reliable infrastructure, a defence force that is fighting fit, the schools and the hospitals that Kiwis rely on. This is what building the future actually looks like, not a TikTok, not a press release, and definitely not a song about ducks. This year's net capital package is $5.7 billion. And yes, that's larger than we'd planned, but don't take it as a signal of permanently higher borrowing, but as a deliberate, targeted investment in resilience. Roads of national significance are underway. Hawke's Bay Expressway, Otaki to North Levin, Warkworth to Tahana. This budget adds Cambridge to Pieri, completing the Waikato Expressway. And you know the roads that Labor's cancelled, well, we're now building them. And we're also building the schools and the hospitals and the courthouses and the police stations in a considered way that gives certainty to business and to the tradies and builders we want staying here in New Zealand. Now, Mr Speaker, if you can't produce abundant, affordable energy independently, you do not have a national security. You do not have economic security. Full stop. It's that simple. And New Zealand's strategic energy vulnerability is no longer theoretical. We see it every day in the Strait of Hormuz. And our Kiwis are experiencing it at the pump and on the factory floors up and down this country. But I'm telling you, the oil and gas ban was the most economically reckless decision ever made by anyone from a New Zealand government. It was a disaster for working people. It was a disaster for manufacturers. It was a disaster for energy security. It was don't care-onomics in action, a feel-good decision made without thought to the real cost to real Kiwis. And if there's just one thing that Labor and Green MPs could do would be to help Kiwis, it would be to drop their commitment to reintroduce that ban. Just one thing. Do one thing. But I'm telling you, they're not going to do it because they'd sooner be on the right side of a Labor Party dinner party than they would be actually on the right side of the Whakatane mill dealing with their energy bill. And I want to say a challenge to the members opposite from Labor, the Greens and Te Pāti Māori, because when you're going to head out into regional New Zealand for the first time since the last election to try and make the case for why people should vote for you, you need to be real straight with them. You need to be straight about the failed policies of that last government and what that did to our manufacturing sector. You need to be straight with them about the fact that the livelihoods of working people were sacrificed in exchange for a nice headline about banning oil and gas. And you can't say you care about the cost of living and working people unless you're serious about energy security. So, Mr Speaker, we're taking actions to build strategic coal reserves, $90 million worth of extra diesel at Marsden Point. Is it costly? Yes. Is it less costly than the alternative? Absolutely. And this budget certainly builds on big commitments into energy. And I want to be extremely clear that going forward from this point in New Zealand, our energy independence must be treated as a national security action instead of an agenda about contributing to long-term climate strategy. The bottom line is we are never going to compete in a globally technological world without abundant, affordable energy. So as we keep saying, we're going to prioritise the solar farm over the skink each and every day. Now, Mr Speaker, if I can talk about health, because we are fixing the basics of what New Zealanders get from their health system. And this budget delivers 3-day postnatal stays, paediatric palliative care, expanded bowel screening, and a new hospital block in Whangarei. Thank you, Shane Reddy. And when a dollar doesn't go into growing the bureaucracy, which is the only thing that grew under Labor, let's be honest about it, it goes to what actually makes a difference to people across this great country. Now, Mr Speaker, it didn't get much pickup, but there was a really excellent piece by Harriet Lawton in the Post, which uncovered more detail on Labor's GP policy. And I think Labor really wants us to know too much about it. But do you know you won't actually be allowed to choose whether you see a GP or not? No, the Labor government will decide that. And their plan is that you're going to ring them up. Tell them what's going on, and then they're going to decide if you're actually allowed to go to a doctor's appointment. And I think if you've paid any attention over the last 10 years to how Labor manages big projects, I just don't think setting up a call centre to triage 26 million GP visits a year is a good idea. I actually think it will go as well as last weekend's list ranking meeting that they had, I think. And I think the only other thing they didn't tell us was that actually when you ring up, they're going to thin out that call line queue even further because Aisha Varal's going to be singing that duck song again. Well, Mr Speaker, we are also fixing the basics in education. Cell phones are banned. Kids are learning an hour a day of reading, maths and writing. We've got structured literacy, structured numeracy, standardised reporting, a brand new curriculum, a replacement for NCA. And I'll tell you, it's working. Our kids are going to school in greater numbers. Thank you, David Seymour. Our maths acceleration programs are working, and we're seeing big improvements amongst our Year 6 students in particular. You know who was in charge in that damaging decline? It was the Labor government. It was Chris Hipkins, who was the Minister of Education for 5.5 years, and they were just too busy spending more, borrowing more, taxing more than worrying about what was going on with our kids and why they were falling behind. But I saw a really insightful story the other day involving Ginny Anderson. It was in the Herald, and it was her views on education. And what she said is, look, she said there are some ideological differences between National and Labor on what our kids should be learning. An example she gave was, and I quote, if you're waiting for the bus and it doesn't arrive, and you can tell it's 22 minutes late, what are you going to do now? Now, well, I've got to tell you, if her time as a police minister is anything to go by, and God help us if she ever ended up running education, I think the answer would be something like, if the bus is late, just steal a car and drive it into a vape shop. I mean, that's basically, I think, what we would be getting. So, Mr Speaker, we are investing in education. We have got more teacher training. We've got 232 new classrooms. We're doubling the number of trades academies out to 20,000 kids. Because to build the future, you need builders, you need roofers, you need plumbers, you need sparkies, and this government backs them. And finally, Mr Speaker, I want to talk about law and order because we are securing our communities, and that's another basic that we've had to fix. 3 strikes restored, gang patches banned, youth crime cracked, stalking criminalised, more police on the beat. The result, 49,000 fewer victims of serious violent crime, 22% reduction in youth offending. But any victim is one victim too many, and so the work continues, the work carries on, and that's why we're investing more in police and corrections to manage prison growth, because to be honest, it shouldn't be controversial to say that criminals belong in prison, not out on our streets. Mr Speaker, on that side of the House, they believe in repealing 3 strikes, they believe in abolishing prisons and defunding the police. But I've got to tell you, on this side of the House, we have a coalition government. It is the government of law and order. And we believe the rights of victims come ahead of the rights of offenders each and every day. We make no apology for that. Well, Mr Speaker, this is a budget that is honest about the world that we face and clear-eyed about what it takes to succeed in it. There are politicians in this House who think that the answer to each and every problem is quite simply to spend more, tax more, borrow more. They think spending your way out of a cost of living crisis, borrow your way through a fuel shock, tax your way to growth. Well, I'm telling you, it's not a plan, it's an addiction. And like all addiction, it feels fine until the bill arrives, and the bill always arrives. So, Mr Speaker, you will not find those politicians in the National Party. This is a government that came here with a mission, fixing the basics, building the future, and 3 years in, this is exactly what we are doing. We are fixing the basics of the economy. Inflation down, interest rates down, growth up, wages rising. We are fixing the basics of law and order. We are fixing the basics of how we teach our kids to read, write and add up. And we are fixing the basics of our energy security, our fiscal position and our place in the world. And, Mr Speaker, we are building the future in roads and hospitals and classrooms and defence and trade relationships with India and Singapore and the wider Indo-Pacific, in renewable energy projects now coming out of the ground, in the young Kiwis who are staying home, who are coming home and are building their lives here. I've said it before, but our inheritance from what I call the greatest generation, those who built the peace after World War II and the rules-based order that followed, is not guaranteed. As I've said before, it must be chosen, it must be worked for by every generation. Budget 2026 makes that choice. It's a responsible choice, a courageous choice, a choice to secure our future, not by spending more, borrowing more and taxing more, but by building something that lasts. Mr Speaker, I commend Budget 2026 to the House. We are fixing the basics and building the future to secure New Zealand's future.